"Not him, father. I'm afraid of that human warrior," cried the alien princess. Princess Lyra stood at the edge of the highest balcony, her pale hands gripping the cold metal railing. Below her, the storms of the Crimson Sea churned with an unearthly fury, lightning striking the floating isles with a sound like the roar of 1,000 beasts. Yet she did not feel fear, at least not entirely. She felt something else, curiosity, and though she would not admit it even to herself, a growing, restless longing. The Starborn people had always been taught that humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and unworthy of trust. Lyra's father, the High King of Vyrlia, had warned her countless times. "Stay away from their world, Lyra. Do not let your heart be touched by that which you cannot control." But the princess, curious and stubborn, had always believed that some truths lay beyond the rules of her people. Tonight she had ventured to the observation tower alone, her flowing silver robes catching the wind. The high glass windows gave a perfect view of the human world below, a patchwork of forests, rivers, and cities glowing faintly under the night sky. And tonight she had seen something that made her heart beat fast in a way she could not name. A human warrior moved across the battlefield, cutting through shadows with fierce precision. Kale. He was tall, with dark hair that fell into his eyes and shoulders broad as if carved from stone. But it was more than his strength that caught her attention. It was the way he fought with purpose, as though every movement had meaning beyond survival. Every life he spared seemed to weigh on his soul. Lyra's breath caught. Why does he stir something in me that he should not? She wondered. Her father's warnings echoed in her mind, but they were drowned out by a strange, aching fascination. She wanted to see him closer, to understand the human that made her pulse uneven and her mind restless. She did not notice the shadow until it moved beside her. "You should not be here, Lyra," said the voice, smooth yet firm. She spun around. Her royal advisor, a tall, silver-eyed starborn named Kales, stood silently, his robes catching the wind. I was just looking," she stammered. "Looking is dangerous," he said, his voice calm but heavy with warning. "You saw him. Did you understand what you saw?" Lyra shook her head, though her fingers still clenched the railing. I don't know. He is strange, brave, and," she faltered, uncertain of the feeling. "Powerful? No, different." Kales's gaze was sharp. "Human warriors carry more than steel. They carry shadows of guilt, regret, and sorrow. To touch that can burn the unprepared." Lyra's chest tightened. "Then why does my heart ache when I see him?" She turned back to the glass window, scanning the human world below. Kale moved across the battlefield with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Lyra could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he flinched at every shadow, yet never hesitated when action was required. She shivered, not from the cold, but from a strange recognition that something in him called to her own hidden strength. "Do not follow this feeling, Lyra," Kale said quietly. "The Starborn curse will awaken if the heart bends toward what it should not. Once the curse moves, there is no turning back." She looked at him sharply. "The curse? You always speak of the curse. What do you mean?" Kales did not answer immediately. Instead, he pointed toward the human warrior below. "That human is not ordinary. He will change the fate of more than just your heart. And if he touches your life, the world itself may tremble." Lyra's fingers dug into the railing as fear and excitement mixed within her. She had always lived in a world of rules, of expectation, of safety behind walls. Yet now, looking at him, she felt a pull she could not resist. What if my life is meant to be more than these walls? The wind shifted, carrying the scent of ozone and smoke from the distant battlefield. Lightning flickered across the clouds, illuminating Kale in bursts of silver light. For a moment, it seemed as if he looked up, not at the world but directly at her. Lyra froze, her breath caught in her throat. No human could know she existed. The distance was too vast, the air between them unbreachable. Yet in that instant something passed through the storm, a connection fleeting, unspoken, dangerous. Her heart thundered in her chest. Kaylee's voice cut through her thoughts. "You see now why you must stay away. Even to watch from here, it is perilous. The heart knows, Lyra, the heart never lies." Lyra pressed her palms against the glass, leaning forward. "But why? Why should I be afraid? He is human, yes, but he is not evil. I feel, she could not name it. A longing, a trembling in her soul, as if the stars themselves were speaking through him. Kaylee stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Because the Starborn have survived for centuries by remembering the rules. Because those who break them," his voice faltered, unusually human in its hesitancy, "often pay a price greater than any war could demand." Lightning split the sky again, and Kale shifted on the battlefield. A demon, twisted and shadowed, lunged at a group of human soldiers. Without hesitation, he dove into the fray, his sword a silver blur. Lyra's eyes widened. He was fearless, yet she could see the strain, the small hesitations that betrayed his fear. And somehow it made him more real, more human, more perfect in her eyes. She did not hear Kaylee step back, leaving her alone with the view. She barely noticed the first trickle of fear creep through her. The human world was so far below, so different from her life of order and law, yet she wanted to fall into it. She wanted to see him, to understand the weight he carried. The storm raged, wind tearing through the towers, and a thought, unbidden and dangerous, formed in her mind. "I must see him closer. I must know him." And then, as if the universe had heard her secret desire, a shadow moved across the palace walls. Lyra turned sharply, fear tightening her chest. "Princess Lyra." The voice was low, serious, not Kaylee's, stronger, male. The sound made her pulse skip. Her eyes widened as she realized the figure stepping onto the balcony. Kale. Somehow, impossibly, he had arrived, not from the battlefield but through a rift in the storm itself. His dark hair clung to his face from the rain, his armor scratched and battered, yet he looked at her with an intensity that stole her breath. How, she began, but words failed. Kale's gaze did not waver. "You are Princess Lyra," he said simply. "The stars guided me here." Lyra's heart thundered. "No, that is impossible. Humans cannot." Kale's lips curved into a faint, almost sad smile. "I am not ordinary." The wind howled around them, tearing at their robes and hair. The storm above mirrored the chaos in Lyra's chest. Fear and longing twisted together, and for the first time she understood her father's warnings, not as commands but as truth laced with danger. This human could destroy her world. And yet he had arrived. Kaylee's voice came faintly from the shadows, warning and helpless. "Princess, step back." But Lyra could not move. Her feet felt rooted to the balcony. She wanted to flee, to hide, to obey, but her heart had already begun its rebellion. Kale stepped closer, careful yet unrelenting. "I do not mean harm, I seek only to speak." Lyra's hands trembled. Why come here? You do not belong in our world, you are human, you are danger." Kale's eyes softened, yet their intensity did not fade. "And yet I see more than danger. I see a light, a strength, something worth protecting. Something worth risking everything for." Lyra's breath caught, the storm around them echoing the storm within. She wanted to flee. She wanted to obey her father. She wanted to scream, not him, "I'm afraid." But the words froze on her lips. She could not speak them. She could only stare, heart hammering, soul trembling. And then a voice from the shadows, urgent and sharp. "Princess, he comes for you, and the stars themselves whisper your doom." Lyra's eyes widened, and Kale's gaze flicked toward the darkness. A cold dread wrapped around her heart. Danger, fear, and something else. Something she could not name. The balcony shook as the storm above reached a crescendo. Lyra took a step back, yet her eyes never left Kale. Her heart ached, a strange and terrible longing filling her chest. She wanted to trust him, to believe in the connection that sparked between them. Yet every part of her knew that to step forward might ignite a fire she could never control. The winds tore at her hair. The crimson light of the moons flickered across Kale's face. And Lyra knew, deep in her heart, that her life had changed forever. And the storm was only beginning. The storm above the floating towers of the Starborn Palace raged without mercy. Lightning tore across the crimson sky, illuminating the fractured aisles below where the shadowed forms of demons writhed in the air. Princess Lyra clutched the railing of the balcony, her silver robes drenched and whipping around her as the wind howled. Kale, the human warrior who had appeared as if summoned by fate itself, stood a few paces away, his dark armor glinting in the stormlight. His eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the horizon, calculating precise. "Princess Lyra," he called over the roar of the storm. "You cannot stay here, it is not safe." Lyra swallowed hard. Fear and longing warred within her chest. "I cannot leave," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "If you are here, then I will not let you face this alone." Kale's gaze softened, a flicker of something human showing through his hardened exterior. "No one should face this alone," he said, his voice low, yet filled with gravity. "But I am not here to simply protect you. There are forces that seek to control you, and they will not wait." Before she could respond, a shadow burst through the air, a twisted demon with wings like blackened glass. It descended toward the balcony, eyes glowing with malice. Lyra gasped and instinctively drew back, but Kale moved first. With a swift motion, he drew his blade, slashing through the demon's wing. The creature screeched, recoiling, giving Lyra a moment to step aside. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had always known danger existed in the world, but never so close, never so real. And yet, as she watched Kale fight, she could not deny the admiration, even the strange pull of connection she felt. "You must come with me," Kale shouted, fending off another attack. "I will not fight them all alone." Lyra hesitated. Her instincts screamed to obey her father's warnings, to flee, to hide within the palace walls. But the sight of him, fighting with both strength and fear, ignited something deep within her, a spark of courage she had never acknowledged before. She nodded, gripping the balcony railing, and prepared to leap. Kale caught her in a swift motion as she jumped, pulling her close to avoid the snapping claws of another demon. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Lyra's heart thundered, not from fear but from something else, something unspoken and dangerous. They landed safely on a lower platform of the palace, away from the immediate threat. Kale kept his arm around her, his eyes scanning the skies. "You should not have come," he said, his voice quieter now, almost tender. Lyra looked up at him, her wet hair clinging to her face. "I could not stay behind. I wanted to help, and her words faltered, lost in the storm. "I wanted to understand you." Kale's expression softened further, a rare vulnerability flickering in his dark eyes. "You are brave, princess. Braver than you know, but bravery alone will not protect you. You must trust more than courage. You must trust me, and even then it may not be enough." The demon forces below were relentless, their twisted forms circling like vultures over the floating palace. Lyra realized with a sinking heart that the threat was not only physical, it was something that could reach into her very soul. The starborn curse Kales had warned would awaken if her heart strayed toward forbidden love. And here she was, drawn to the one human she had been told to fear. The palace bells rang, a warning sound resonating through the floating towers. The council of starborn warriors had arrived, their weapons drawn, their eyes wide with alarm at the demon incursion. Lyra's father, the High King, appeared at the top of the steps, his golden armor gleaming even in the storm. "Lyra," he called, his voice both commanding and trembling with fear. "Step back. This human, he is dangerous. He cannot be trusted." Kale's grip on Lyra tightened slightly, protective yet respectful. "I am not your enemy," he shouted. "I fight only to protect her and all of you if you will allow it." The High King's eyes narrowed. "Foolish human, you know nothing of the starborn curse, nothing of the fate of our princess." Lyra stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "Father, he saved me. And I feel that he is not what you fear. He is." Her words faltered, but the meaning was clear. She trusted him perhaps more than anyone else in her life. Kale nodded slightly, acknowledging her silent strength. "The danger is real," he said. "But it is not me you should fear. It is the darkness that hunts both our worlds. Together we may survive." The storm intensified, and another wave of demons descended. This time, Kale and the Starborn warriors fought side by side. The battle was a chaotic dance of steel and magic, lightning and shadow. Lyra watched from a safe distance at first, then, seeing a demon strike toward Kale, she could not stay back. She raised her hand, summoning a faint shimmer of her own Starborn magic. The light pulsed from her palm, striking the demon and forcing it to retreat. Kale glanced at her, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "You have power," he said, admiration clear in his voice. "But control it carefully. The storm feeds on fear as much as on anger." Lyra nodded, her chest heaving. She had never felt so alive, so aware of every heartbeat, every breath. And yet beneath the adrenaline and awe, a thread of fear tugged at her, fear of what this connection with him might mean. After what felt like hours, the demons began to retreat, driven back by the combined force of Kale and the Starborn warriors. The storm above slowly began to abate, leaving a silver mist over the crimson sea. Lyra leaned against Kale, exhausted yet exhilarated. Her wet hair clung to her face, her silver robes torn in places. But her heart was alive in ways it had never been before. "You saved us," the High King said, his voice still trembling with the echo of battle. "But at what cost, Princess? You put yourself in danger for a human." Lyra lifted her chin, meeting her father's gaze. "I do not know the cost," she said quietly. "But I know this: I could not stay behind. I could not ignore what I felt." Kale looked at her, his dark eyes softening with something unspoken. "You are stronger than your father knows, stronger than anyone knows, and if the darkness comes again, I will be here beside you." Lyra's heart tightened. She wanted to reach for him, to trust him completely, but the Starborn curse whispered in the back of her mind. A warning, a shadow that threatened to undo everything. She could feel it, a pulse of ancient magic tied to her heart, sensing the stirrings of forbidden longing. As the palace began to regroup and the Starborn warriors attended to the wounded, Kale turned to leave. Lyra called after him, but her voice was barely more than a whisper over the wind. "Wait, Kale." He paused, looking back. "Yes." Her hand reached out instinctively, but she did not move closer. Fear and longing battled within her chest. I want to understand. I want to know you, but I am afraid." Kale's lips curved into a faint, understanding smile. "Fear is not weakness. It is proof that you care. Proof that your heart is alive." Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. He was right, but the truth of it was dangerous. She had always been taught to suppress her feelings, to follow duty above all else. And yet here she was, standing in the storm, heart trembling, knowing that the pull she felt toward him was unstoppable. A shadow moved behind her. Kales, silent as ever, stepped forward. "Princess, listen," he said, his voice low and urgent. "The human will bring more than danger. He will bring choices that may break your heart or the world. You must be ready." Lyra turned to Kales, but her eyes drifted back to Kale. He was already moving into the mist, disappearing from sight, yet the memory of his gaze, the touch of his protective hand, lingered in her mind like fire. She whispered to herself, her voice almost lost in the remnants of the storm. "I am afraid, but I cannot turn away." And then, as if the universe had heard her confession, a chilling wind swept through the palace, carrying a voice that made her blood run cold. "This is only the beginning, Princess Lyra. The human comes for you, and with him, the fate of your heart and your world." Lyra's heart skipped a beat, the words echoing in her mind. She felt the pulse of the Starborn curse awaken slightly, a reminder that her choices were no longer hers alone. And yet, even in fear, she knew that Kale had changed something deep inside her, something she could never ignore. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where the mist swallowed the human warrior. The storm had passed, but its mark remained. An invisible thread pulling her toward him, toward danger, and toward a destiny she could not yet understand. And the collision of their worlds had only just begun. The storm had passed, leaving the Starborn Palace draped in a soft silver mist. The floating towers glistened, their edges catching the faint light of the twin moons. Yet despite the calm, a tension lingered in the air, like the silence before a predator strikes. Princess Lyra walked through the palace halls, her robes still damp from the rain, her hair tangled from the wind. The encounter with Kale haunted her thoughts. She could not stop thinking about his dark eyes, the intensity in his gaze, the way he had saved her without hesitation. And yet, with every heartbeat, fear stirred within her. A fear of the Starborn curse, fear of her father's disapproval, fear of what the future might bring. She entered the Forbidden Gardens, a hidden sanctuary of luminescent flowers and twisting vines that few dared to enter. The garden shimmered in the moonlight, a place where the Starborn's magic was strongest. It was here she often came to think, away from the rigid rules and watchful eyes of the palace. Kale was already there, standing near a silvered fountain. He looked almost unreal in the garden's glow, his dark armor contrasting sharply with the pale light, his expression unreadable. "Princess Lyra," he said softly, bowing his head slightly. "You came." Lyra hesitated, then stepped forward. "I could not stop thinking about everything, about you, about the storm, about what might come." Kale's eyes softened. "And now you are here. That alone tells me you are braver than most who bear a crown." Lyra looked down, twisting her fingers nervously. "I am afraid," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of what I feel, afraid of the curse, afraid of what will happen if I cannot control myself." Kale stepped closer but kept a respectful distance. "Fear is not weakness, princess. It is a sign that what you feel is real. It is proof that your heart is alive." Lyra's gaze met his, and in that instant she realized he was right. Her heart did feel alive, alive in ways it had never been before. And yet the fear remained, mingled with longing, curiosity, and something deeper she could not name. "You must know," Kale said, his voice turning serious. "There is more than the storm and the demons. Something follows you, something ancient. The curse is not the only danger." Lyra's pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" Kale's eyes darkened. "There are forces that seek to use your heart for power. Not all humans are your enemies and not all are your allies, but the ones who desire control will stop at nothing to claim you." Lyra shivered. She had always known her life was filled with responsibility, but never had she imagined that even her heart could be a battlefield. "And the curse, it will awaken if I feel too strongly." Kale nodded. "Yes, but it is not meant to punish you. It is a test. A test of courage, of trust, of what you are willing to risk for love." Lyra took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. "Then I do not know if I am ready, but I want to try. I want to understand you and I want to face this with you." Kale's expression softened. "Then we will face it together. But there are trials ahead, trials of the heart and soul, and you must be willing to confront yourself as much as the darkness around you." The garden fell silent, save for the gentle trickle of water from the fountain. Lyra felt the weight of Kale's words pressing on her chest. She had never realized how heavy responsibility could feel when it was tied not only to duty but to love, danger, and fate itself. "Tell me about yourself," she said finally, her voice trembling. "Why do you fight? Why risk so much?" Kale's gaze drifted to the fountain, his reflection fractured in the rippling water. "I have lost people I loved," he said quietly. "Friends, comrades, people I could not save, and I carry their memory with me. I fight because to stand still is to let their sacrifices be in vain. But it is not just duty. I fight because I hope to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And because there is something worth saving. Something I have not yet fully understood until now." Lyra's chest tightened. She sensed the pain beneath his words, the weight of memories that haunted him. and she realized that, like her, he was searching for something beyond duty and fear. "Then we are alike," she whispered. "Both of us are bound by responsibility, yet longing for something more, something beyond what we are told to be." Kale looked at her, and in his eyes she saw recognition, understanding, and a faint spark of hope. "Yes," he said. "And perhaps together we can find a path that neither of us could find alone." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The garden, the palace, even the distant crimson sea felt suspended in time. Lyra felt the stirrings of courage and connection, a mixture of fear and hope that made her chest ache. But their fragile moment was shattered by a sudden noise, a low, guttural growl that echoed through the garden. Lyra turned sharply, and Kale drew his sword with a fluid motion. From the shadows emerged a demon, larger and more terrifying than any they had faced before. Its eyes glowed with red fire, and its wings shimmered with a darkness that seemed almost alive. It stepped forward, each movement deliberate, as if aware of the power Lyra carried within her. Kale moved to stand between Lyra and the creature. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice steady but tense. Lyra's hands trembled, but she did not move. Instead, she focused, drawing on the faint magic that lingered in the garden. A soft, silver light began to shimmer from her palms, growing brighter as she concentrated. The demon recoiled, hissing at the unexpected display of power. Kale glanced at her, eyes wide with surprise and admiration. "Careful," he warned. "Do not let fear control the magic. Channel it with your heart, not your panic." Lyra took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She let the fear wash over her, then released it, letting her determination guide the light. A beam of silver shot from her hands, striking the demon squarely. The creature screeched and fell back, but it did not retreat entirely. Kale seized the opportunity, moving with precise strikes that forced the demon to stagger. "You have power," he said, almost in awe, "more than I imagined, but you must learn control or it will consume you." Lyra nodded, her heart racing. She felt both fear and exhilaration, a mixture that made her feel more alive than ever before. She realized that her power was not something to hide, but something to embrace if she could only learn to master it. The demon lunged again, and this time Lyra and Kale fought together, their movements synchronized in a way that felt instinctive. The combination of her magic and his skill drove the creature back into the shadows, where it finally disappeared, leaving only a faint echo of its growl. Both were breathing heavily, their bodies exhausted but alive. Lyra looked at Kale, her chest still trembling. "We did it," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Kale sheathed his sword, glancing at her with a mixture of respect and concern. "Yes, but this was only the beginning. There are more shadows, more trials, and the curse, it will test you in ways neither of us can predict." Lyra swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words. She knew he was right. The storm was not over and neither was the danger. But for the first time, she also knew that she was not alone. "Then we face it together," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. Kale nodded. "Together." For a moment, silence fell over the garden, broken only by the faint ripple of the fountain. The connection between them, fragile and tentative, had deepened. There was trust now and understanding and the faintest spark of something more. But the quiet was deceptive. From the shadows beyond the garden, a figure watched, cloaked in darkness. Its presence was cold and heavy, and a whisper echoed through the air, carried by the wind. "The princess grows bold. The human awakens desire she must not know. Soon the choice will be hers alone, and the stars will watch as her heart trembles." Lyra shivered, unaware of the danger that lingered just beyond her sight. She turned to Kale, unaware of the eyes watching her, unaware that the trials of the heart and the soul were only beginning. The garden, though beautiful and serene, was no longer a sanctuary. It was a battlefield of trust and fear, courage and longing, where shadows moved unseen and secrets whispered on the wind. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling both fear and hope entwined in her chest. She looked at Kale and whispered almost to herself, "I do not know what is coming, but I will face it. I will face it with you." Kale reached for her hand, a simple gesture filled with meaning. "And I with you," he said, his voice soft but resolute. For a moment they stood there, hands almost touching, hearts beating in unison. The stars above seemed to shimmer in response, as if acknowledging the fragile bond forming between human and princess, warrior and heir, fear and hope. And yet, even as they stood together, the shadow in the garden stirred, a silent reminder that the path ahead would test them in ways neither of them could imagine. The collision of worlds had begun in earnest, and nothing would ever be the same again. The sky above the Starborn Palace burned with crimson and silver, as if the heavens themselves were witnessing the impending reckoning. Princess Lyra stood at the highest balcony, her silver robes fluttering in the wind, her hands trembling as she clutched the railing. The Starborn curse pulsed faintly at her wrist, glowing like a heartbeat of ancient power. She could feel it watching her, testing her, waiting for her to make the wrong choice. Kale stepped beside her, dark armor glinting in the light of the twin moons. His eyes were filled with determination, and yet a softness lingered, a hint of the man who had saved her life and her heart. "The time has come," Kale said quietly. "The shadows will not wait. We must face this together." Lyra nodded, though her chest ached with fear. She had seen the darkness in the gardens, felt the pull of the curse, and understood that what awaited them was more than any ordinary battle. The demons of the storm, the curse, and the powers that sought to control her heart were all converging. "Are you ready?" Kale asked. Lyra swallowed hard. "I am, but I am afraid." "Fear is part of it," Kale said. "It shows that what we face matters. It means we still have a chance." The first wave of shadows descended like a storm, dark and twisted, their eyes glowing red with hunger for her power. Kale drew his sword and Lyra raised her hands, summoning her starborn magic. The light from her palms flared silver and bright, cutting through the darkness like a blade of its own. They moved together, a rhythm forming between them. Kale's strength and skill complemented Lyra's magic, and for a moment it seemed as if nothing could touch them. But then, a deeper, more ancient darkness emerged, a demon unlike any they had faced before. Its wings spread wide, blacker than the night, and its eyes seemed to pierce into Lyra's soul. The curse pulsed at her wrist, warning her that her heart's desire could be its undoing. "You must control it," Kale shouted, parrying a strike. "Do not let the fear take over." Lyra took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She let the fear flow through her, not as a weapon against the darkness, but as a guide. She imagined the bond she shared with Kale, the trust, the hope, the spark of something greater than either of them. The light from her hands flared brighter and the ancient demon shrieked, recoiling. Kale's eyes widened in awe. "You're stronger than I imagined. But the curse—" Lyra opened her eyes, determination shining through the fear. "I will face it," she whispered. "Even if it breaks me, I will not let it control me." The demon surged forward, but Lyra and Kale met it together. Steel and magic intertwined in perfect harmony. Every strike, every burst of light, every careful parry was a testament to their bond. And in that moment, Lyra realized the truth of the curse. It was not punishment, but a challenge. A test of courage, trust, and the willingness to embrace what one feared most. The shadows screamed, retreating before the purity of her will and the strength of their unity. Lyra felt the pulse of the curse lesson as if recognizing her bravery. She glanced at Kale and he gave her a small, encouraging nod. "You are extraordinary," he said softly. "Never doubt your strength." Lyra's chest ached, not from exhaustion, but from the intensity of emotion. She felt the bond between them deepen, the threads of fear and longing intertwining with trust and understanding. And yet, there was one final challenge, the heart of the darkness. A rift opened in the sky, swirling silver and crimson, and from it emerged a figure cloaked in shadow. Its presence radiated power and malice, and Lyra felt the weight of destiny pressing down on her. This was the force that had sought to control her heart, the one that fed on fear and doubt. Kale stepped forward, his sword raised. "I will protect you," he said firmly. Lyra shook her head. "No, this is my test. I must face it myself. But I will not face it alone." She reached out, taking Kale's hand. The contact sent a warmth through her chest, steadying her fear. Together, they faced the shadowed figure. Lyra felt the pull of the curse, the ancient magic that had haunted her family for centuries. It whispered of failure, of loss, of the impossible choice between love and duty. She felt her heart tremble, but Kale's grip reminded her of something vital. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. Lyra lifted her hands, focusing all her energy on the light within her. "I will not be controlled by fear," she declared, her voice ringing across the palace. "I choose hope. I choose trust. I choose love." The light from her palms surged, blinding and pure, pushing the darkness back. The shadowed figure hissed, retreating as Lyra's will strengthened. Kale moved beside her, striking with precision, forcing the remaining darkness to scatter. For a moment, the world was still. The storm above had passed, leaving only the shimmering mist of the palace. Lyra felt the pulse of the curse fade, its hold weakening as she embraced her power and her heart. Kale lowered his sword, his eyes full of pride and awe. "You did it," he said. "You faced it and you triumphed." Lyra exhaled, trembling but relieved. "It was not just me," she said softly. "It was us together." The palace walls, the gardens, even the distant crimson sea seemed to shimmer with a renewed energy. Lyra felt the transformation within her. The fear had not disappeared, but it had become a source of strength, guiding her rather than controlling her. She had faced the curse, the darkness, and her own heart, and had emerged stronger, more complete. Kale reached out, gently brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "You are no longer just the princess," he said quietly. "You are something greater, and I am glad to stand beside you." Lyra's heart swelled with a mixture of relief, joy, and something deeper, a quiet, steady love that had grown through fear and courage. She realized that the bond between them was not just about survival, but about trust, understanding, and the willingness to face the unknown together. The High King appeared then, stepping onto the balcony. His golden armor gleamed even in the soft moonlight, and his expression was unreadable. Lyra tensed, expecting reprimand or anger, but instead he spoke softly. "Lyra, you have faced what I feared. You have proven not only your strength but your wisdom. And you have chosen well." Lyra blinked in surprise. "Father," the High King nodded. "Kale is not a threat. He is a partner in ways I did not anticipate. You have both grown through this trial. Remember, true strength comes not from avoiding fear but from embracing it with courage." Kale bowed his head slightly in respect. "I will protect her, my king, with all I am." The High King's gaze softened. "I trust you. And more importantly, I trust Lyra to make her own choices. She has faced the darkness and emerged victorious. That is all a ruler, a warrior, and a heart truly needs." Lyra felt a sense of peace settle over her. The storm had passed, the curse had been faced, and the shadows had retreated. She had emerged changed but stronger, more certain of herself and her path. She turned to Kale, their hands still intertwined. "We have survived, and yet I feel as if this is only the beginning." Kale smiled, a rare and genuine warmth in his eyes. "Then we face the future together, no matter what comes." Lyra nodded, feeling a courage she had never known before. She realized that life, love, and destiny were not about avoiding danger, but about embracing it and choosing how to face it. And with Kale by her side, she felt ready to confront anything. The twin moons shone brightly above, casting silver light over the floating towers. The palace seemed to hum with a renewed energy, as if acknowledging the victory and the bond that had formed. Lyra and Kale stood together, hands joined, hearts aligned, ready to face the unknown. Yet even in this moment of peace, A distant voice whispered on the wind, faint but certain. The princess has chosen, but the world watches, and destiny is never fully still. What comes next is for the brave to face. Lyra shivered not from fear but from the thrill of possibility. She looked at Kale and he smiled back, a silent promise passing between them. Whatever trials awaited, they would face them together. The storm had ended. The curse had been faced. And in the quiet aftermath, a new chapter began, one of courage, love, and transformation. Lyra whispered to herself, her voice steady, full of hope. Even freed, I will face the future and I will not be afraid. Kale's hand tightened around hers. Never afraid, princess. Never alone. The stars above twinkled, as if celebrating the bond that had been forged through fear, hope, and courage. And in that light, the princess and the human warrior stood together, ready to meet the future, whatever it might hold. The story of Lyra and Kale was only beginning, but they had already transformed, and nothing would ever be the same again.